Donald Trump gave a speech in regard to our policy with Cuba. And of course, in his effort to roll back anything that Obama did, he has decided that no, lifting the embargo on Cuba is not a good idea. Now, he gives very interesting reasons as to why he thinks that's the case. Let's take a look at the video.
Effective immediately, I am canceling the last administration's completely one-sided deal with Cuba. Our new policy begins with strictly enforcing US law. We will not lift sanctions on the Cuban regime until all political prisoners are freed, freedoms of assembly and expression are respected, all political parties are legalized, and free and internationally supervised elections are scheduled. We will very strongly restrict American dollars flowing to the military, security, and intelligence services that are the core of the Castro regime. They will be restricted. We will enforce the ban on tourism. We will enforce the embargo. We will take concrete steps to ensure that investments flow directly to the people so they can open private businesses and begin to build their country's great, great future, a country of great potential.
Okay, so it's fascinating because he thinks, well, we can't do business with Cuba. I mean, they don't respect their people. There's all these human rights abuses and violations, and we can't have any of it, right? No, it has nothing to do with that. It's all about pandering to Cuban voters in Florida specifically. And just to give you quick stats on that, in Florida, Cubans were about twice as likely as non-Cuban Latinos to vote for Donald Trump. More than half, 54%, supported Trump during this past election. So he's pandering to them. If he genuinely cared about human rights abuses, there are other countries that he's definitely okay with doing business with like that Texas. Are much worse, right? That are much worse when it comes to human rights issues, okay? Saudi Arabia, for instance, which we keep bringing up, is terrible when it comes to human rights. And if you want to focus on what they've done on an international scale, focus on Yemen, right? So Saudi Arabia has committed numerous violations of international humanitarian law. Since coalition airstrikes began, more than 4,125 civilians have been killed and 7,200 wounded. Airstrikes are the single largest cause of civilian casualties in Yemen, right? And then in their own country, the beheadings. They behead people for nonviolent drug offenses, for instance. But that's not a human rights issue, right? He's not concerned about that, especially when he does business and profits from business with Saudi Arabia. Anyway, it's not about human rights. And look, I'm not gonna sit here and pretend like Cuba's perfect. Obviously, they don't have a democracy there. They don't allow elections. And there are people that are suffering under the Castros. So, but I also know that the embargo did not work. And if you want actual change in Cuba, you don't do it by shutting them out and thinking that that's gonna make a difference. Yeah. Obviously, we had the embargo for decades and it made no difference whatsoever.
The embargo just needed time.
It's
if you just had a
absurd.
little patience, that thing I think was about to kick in.
The pandering is unbearable. I don't know what's worse, this pandering or like the hot sauce in my purse pandering that Hillary did. But like the pandering drives me crazy regardless of who does it.
No, this is worse because again, that's a point. I mean, I understand and you and I were on the same page regarding Hillary. But I mean, the hot sauce pandering is just stupid.
It is.
Right, it's stupid. This is American policy. This rolls back actual progress. Although significantly, because it's Trump, it's mostly a lie. Right?
Yeah.
Here's who's, first of all, we're gonna protect investments, make sure they go to the people. That means we're gonna continue to allow investments.
That's right.
Because all they have to do is say, no, it'll go to the people, right? I mean, there's no, cruise lines, airlines, unaffected by this, right? Because they've already set up, so they're not gonna make them, so the travel, so it won't be, Cuban-Americans get to go back and forth, right? So and in fact, we already know from the Cuban-American National Foundation, And one Cuban-American lawmaker said the policy isn't going to be anything new. It's pretty weak, and there will be many in Miami who don't think it went far enough. But he had to start the speech, I am ending the Obama. You didn't. You ended about 21% of it and kept about 79% of it.
Right.
Because you have to, because it's good for business. And I'm sure everyone else, especially the few professionals in the State Department who have any power now, were like, no, this is a terrible, terrible idea. And the Obama policy was marginal. It wasn't, and significantly, Havana's embassy in Washington and our embassy in Havana stay. Well, if you want to roll back the policy, you make a big point, you close the embassies. And the business foundations, the business ties that we've set up, all that stayed. So it's all for show, and it's all an attempt.
It's all pandering, again, all pandering.
It's not just pandering, but it's an attempt to get us to stop talking about the other stuff.
Right, it's exactly what you said, Anna. He's trying to appeal, and it's to a certain amount of the Cuban population in Florida that's very conservative and that hold a grudge from the Castros.
Oh, believe me, I know.
Now, and Ben, what you said, let me tell you something. Donald Trump can talk all he wants. Hilton hotels, casino gambling companies, cruise ships, airlines, they're looking at him like, would you shut up? We're already divided. The only thing is we're dividing up Cuba, see how we're gonna make the money.
Yeah.
You are not gonna get in the way of this. Now, Donald Trump cares about prisoners because he could become one on any day. He's like, we got to make sure we're nice to prisoners because I could end up in there with them. No, and then another thing, when you talk about Cuba and communism, all it's going to take is a phone call from Putin. Putin's going to be like, hey, did I tell you to do that? And he said, I'm sorry. You know, this is, it's not only pandering, this is what's happened with this administration. It was the same thing with Comey when the initial story came out, they were protecting Hillary's, right? Like they're not even bothering to try to lie anymore. You know what I mean? Like it used to be they were a lot more creative and they put effort into it.
Right.
This kind of thing.
He's a sloppy liar.
This isn't even a good try. Like you said, Ben, you know, the moment he said, we're still gonna allow the investments, because all the corporations said, you better believe we're going to allow the
Marriott's already got a hotel there. That's unaffected.
Absolutely.
Unaffected.
Absolutely. And when they have the casino game, because you know Cuba used to be the spot.
Yeah.
Cuba used to be the hot spot to go, to gamble, to hang out, to do, and they want to build that again. And
of course they do. The American government has always wanted to dictate what goes on in Cuba, right? And so one of the reasons why we allowed amnesty for Cubans was because, the American government was huffing and puffing that they didn't get to, have Batista in power anymore. They didn't get to have a say over, who was in charge in Cuba anymore. And so, and by the way, the whole Cuban amnesty thing, think about the double standard there, right? It doesn't matter if you're coming from a country like Mexico where you're also being persecuted, where your life is also at risk. Doesn't matter if you're coming from Syria, where there's evidence of the government targeting innocent civilians, including women and children. Doesn't matter. Cubans get amnesty because we hate communism, but everyone else who's being persecuted and whose lives are at risk, that doesn't matter. And by the way, I love Cubans a lot. So this has nothing to do with like, I don't like Cubans and they shouldn't get amnesty. I'm just saying that double standard was absolutely ridiculous. And the reason why it was put in place is because the United States wanted to dictate what was going on in that country, and that's it.
Fulgencio Batista was a terrible guy.
He was horrible.
Now that's it. I went to Cuba in 1998, and look, it's not, my dad wrote a book with didn't write a book with Castro. He wrote a book about Castro, but he was there for a long time and thought we misrepresented Castro in many ways. That said, he's a communist dictator, but not. And you walk around there, and on the street corners. In 1998 or 99 when I went, there were guys with berets and military uniforms holding semi-automatic weapons, and they are watching I can do whatever I want, right? I'm a foreigner. I get to stay in the nicest hotels. I can go out to the bars and drink. They don't care. They are watching their own people. It was spooky, right? I get it, but they are 90 miles from here, 90 miles from the United States, and obviously this is a country. If you think we're a power, this is within our sphere of influence. We ought to try and exact some influence. That's what this policy was going to do after 57 years of the dumbest, most ineffective policy that, look, if it worked, if the embargo had worked, and in 1967, Cuba was like, we can't do it with the Soviets. We're coming aboard, we're switching, right? But it didn't work in any way. It didn't even work after the Soviets fell. We were too dumb to take advantage of the fall of communism. The whole country desperately needs a coat of paint. It got painted in 1959 and then never again.
Yeah.
The people who should be dying to get in, Sherwin-Williams. Those guys could make millions there.
Well, the casino business wants to go in, and if there's one business that isn't going to be bothered with Donald Trump, it's the casino business. They're like, listen,
we've worked with you
gave you a chance.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
We gave you a chance. Sit back, get.
How did you mess that up?
Yeah.
How did you mess that up?
Right.
Anyway.
Young Turks membership creates independent media.
Believe me.
No ads.
Believe me.
All the shows.
Believe me.
On demand.
Believe me.
Support independent media.
Believe me.
It's awesome, tremendous. You'll love it.
Believe me.
And by the end, you'll be thinking,
I'm like a smart person.
tytnetwork.com/join.